Alright, welcome back, prop builders. I actually don't have a prop tutorial for you right now. I actually had a couple people ask me about this professional hot knife that I bought and what it could do and what's the benefits of using this over regular razor blades for our projects of diorama building for our figures. I do want to mention this is not a sponsored video, but I do love this product a lot. That's why I bought this version, because I'm just going to be working with a lot of white foam core board, and this is going to make it a lot easier for me to build a lot of stuff a lot faster. So I'm going to go ahead and open this packaging and come back, and we're going to see all the stuff it includes, and then I'm going to demonstrate what it can do and what's the benefits of using it and the cons as well. Alright, now that we have everything out of package, this is what it includes. It includes the Hotknife tool. This is the one without the dial that you could change the heat, because I got this simple one because I had the other one. It broke on me. It lasted a long while. I used it for woodworking stuff, but I needed something just more simple since I am only cutting foam for my projects now. I just got the simple one that has the on and off switch. It came with two of these hot knives attachments. It came with the stand, and it came with a little pamphlet. It tells you a couple tips and warnings and all that kind of stuff on here. Nothing really too big. And I'll cover some of the tips that it covers in there as well. Some other things that you're probably going to need is a pair of pliers, some type of cleaning instrument, a metal ruler if you're using foam for your projects to get good clean edges, and a cutting surface, which I'll get into. I'm going to clear this off, and then we're going to get into the cutting surface. Alright, so what you guys see in front of you is a piece of tempered glass. It does recommend to use a tempered glass mat. You can buy those at like Hobby Lobby might have them, fabric stores. And they even, from this company, they even sell their own, if I remember correctly. If you don't want to get a professional one, you could just go to your local hardware store and ask for a piece of tempered glass. And my hardware store does have it, so I got a piece of that. And it also recommends to tape off the edges just so you're careful with the edges. So I'm going to do that off camera, and we're going to come back and go to the next step. Alright, now that I have my cutting surface with the tape so it doesn't slide around and it protects my area, and it's also a good guide, especially if I'm cutting big pieces on here. It shows me where the end of my glass is. Just a good tip right there. I don't know if I forgot if I mentioned this, but it did come with a stand. You're going to want to tape this to your work surface too. You don't want this sliding around. So say if you have it on here or on your table or wherever you're working, if you don't tape it down and you put your hot knife on here, it's going to slide around. There's a chance it might fall off and injure you or damage your property. So it's a good idea to always tape this down to your work surface. So I'm going to go ahead and skip over that, and I'm going to tape it off camera for you guys, and then we're going to come back and get into some of the details of using the hot knife and all the other materials it could cut through and all that kind of stuff. Alright, right before we get into cutting our material, I do want to show you guys the blade that could come on and off with this product. You want to make sure your device is off, because this does get really hot, and the switch is off. We're going to go ahead and screw in our blade attachment on here. You want to do this very carefully, and you're going to want to have a set of pliers which doesn't come with this. You just want a set of pliers to make sure it's on there nice and tight. You don't want this getting loose on you when you're working. But I did notice, especially with my other product, if you're doing curvy lines onto the foam, sometimes this can get loose, so it's always good to have a pair of pliers next to you. So if you are working on something, it does get loose, you can use your pair of pliers while it's still hot and then tighten it really good. And we're going to go ahead and let the device heat up to its proper temperature before we start moving on to cutting the material. Okay, now that we waited the 4 to 5 minutes for our tool to heat up, it heats up roughly around 4 or 5 minutes all the way to the proper temperature, and we're just going to go ahead and get into cutting some of this material. The first thing I have here is the really flaky kind of styrofoam stuff. I just have a piece of scrap here just for demonstration. The benefit of using this particular foam is if you don't live in the United States, sometimes I know, especially in the Dio group, there's people asking where can I find the pink insulation foam that we use from Home Depot or Lowe's, and all they could find is this kind of stuff. If you use this hot knife, it's going to make your life a lot easier working with this stuff. So I'm just going to demonstrate cutting through this and showing you guys how well it cuts through it, and it doesn't really get all flaky everywhere. It actually makes it nice and neat. So you're just going to grab your blade, and you're going to let the heat do most of the work, and then just bring it right through quickly and then come off. And see, it's a perfect edge. It doesn't get all flaky. The only downside is if you do make a line and you want to cut out a very specific straight line or something like that, You can do straight lines with this, but there is some melting of the foam. But like I said, it doesn't get the flakes everywhere. Like this side's all flaky. I could just clean that up just by running my blade all the way across. And there we go. And as you can see, there's some residue left on the blade. While it's hot, I know they recommend using like a soft cloth or something like that. I like using a damp sponge. I just cut a piece off a regular sponge and I could run my blade across that and clean it very easily. The sponge is not included, unfortunately, but you could buy a cheap sponge from the Dollar Tree or somewhere and just clean your knife that way. If you do want to do straight lines and you're having trouble, what I recommend using is a metal ruler, and just following the ruler, just touching your blade to the ruler and then bringing it straight across, and you're letting the heat do the cutting for you. And I recommend the metal ruler because you don't want a wood ruler or a plastic ruler because you're going to melt it. So that's the benefits of using this hot tool, especially with this type of foam. If you can't find the foam lar or the pink installation foam, what it's mostly called, you can't use this, especially if you can't, like I said, reach that other foam. This is a good alternative tool to use, so you don't have to be sanding and worrying about edges falling apart. So I'm going to go ahead and clean my work area, and we're going to move on to the next type of foam. Just toss this to the side. We're going to move on to what I like using as well as the pink foam. I like using the foam core. This is just the cheap dollar store foam. The quick tip about this is you're letting the blade cut the paper and you're letting the heat cut the foam. And this is going to save you if you use a lot of X-Acto knives, which I was doing. I was going through a lot of X-Acto knives because it would dull the blade so bad, so quickly, especially if I used a lot of foam core or the pink insulation foam. This will help you cut the cost of that. So if you use this, you're going to use one of these blades for a very long time. And the blades are really cheap to replace. Instead of buying more and more blades for your X-Acto, you could just buy 2 blades of this and be set for a couple months, even maybe a year, depending how much work you actually do. So I'm going to just demonstrate how it cuts through this. Like I said, the blade's going to do the cutting for the paper, and the heat's going to cut the foam for me. And you don't want to apply too much force. You just want to apply enough force just to drag right across the foam core. And sometimes you need to make 2 passes because that last piece of paper didn't cut through. But it's very clean. It cleans up the edge for you. There's no jaggedness. Like if you don't know if your blade's sharp enough on an X-Acto knife or box cutter, sometimes you can get jagged edges and it eats and chips at the way of the foam. With this tool, it doesn't. It's also well for beveled edges. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate a beveled edge for you guys. So say you want a beveled edge. Let me turn it this way. You just want to get your metal ruler and then hold your knife at a 45-degree angle. And continue all the way across. Well, I don't have enough room on my workspace right now. And if you follow your ruler, you could get a nice beveled edge on there. Let me re-demonstrate that because I didn't have enough room to bring my knife all the way across. I'm just going to use it without the ruler. I'm going to hold it at a 45-degree. And like I said, just keep it straight as possible. If you had a ruler with you, you could do it straight as possible. But I have limited space behind this camera. But you can give a beveled edge. As well as you could do, if you have a template. I know carpenters have those metal templates with the circles. You could use that to make perfect circles. And as well, this hot knife, like I said, could do curves very easily. You're just taking your time going down, letting the knife cut through the paper and the heat cut through the foam. You're just cutting all the way across. And there we go. We have a nice wavy line. So that's pretty much it for the foam core. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to that pink insulation foam. I already drew a line right here. And we're just going to make an incision on this line. And since the blade's not big enough to cut all the way through, we could just go on the side and then follow that same line down. And then we go and see it creates a singed edge, so there's no chipping or anything. It makes it very solid on the edge right there. That's something to keep in mind. Let's see what else I could do. Another thing I want to mention with this type of foam, you're going to want to wear a mask. Work outside with the mask, because this stuff does release some toxic fumes. The other foam core board doesn't release toxic fumes, so it's always good on the side of caution to wear a mask anyways. And then I want to show you guys maybe some brick detailing, like if you actually score this with like bricks. I'm not using a ruler. Remember, if you use a ruler, you get a lot more cleaner edges. And depending how deep you cut is how big these lines come out. And if you keep the blade there, it's going to make a bigger a bigger line. So that's also, if you want something bigger, you just do slower and it creates a bigger line compared to these lines. But if you move it fast and less deep, it's going to make a more clean line. So I'm going to go ahead and do some bricks right here. Just some random bricks. You can make ruins with these, like ruined bricks or something like that. There's a lot of applications that you could do with this. If you take your time and stuff like that, you could really do all sorts of crazy things with this. I like it for this, especially if I'm cutting big sheets into sections. I could get a nice clean line so I don't have jagged edges or anything. It makes it easier to paint. Same thing with foam core. I use it from foam core mostly because that's a lot of stuff I cut out for detailing as well. If there's anything that you guys want me to see what materials this also works on, maybe cardboard or plastics, which I don't recommend very well, but I do want it because of the fumes. But you got to remember to always clean your Hotknife after you're done using it with a damp sponge. That's what I use, or they also recommend a soft cloth. And if you forget to clean your blade and you still have stuff on there and it's already cold, you could use fine grit sandpaper, which I have a bunch of fine grit sandpaper on these nail files. So I just take my nail file over there if I forget to clean off both sides, and that'll clean it up very well too. But I just like using a damp sponge. It's kind of like what you use when you solder things. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up my area and I'm going to come right back. Alright, that's it for this, guys. I just wanted to leave you guys with a quick thing that I forgot to mention. If you have one of those self-healing mats, do not use this on there. You're going to wreck your work surface. And don't work on your coffee table as well. Make sure you're working on tempered glass. That's a really key thing to work on, especially using this tool. And always be safe with this hot tool. Make sure it's cooled down before you put it away as well. And if you guys have anything that any materials you guys have in mind that you want me to test this on, anything at all that I haven't showed here at all, leave it down in the comments. And as always, guys, don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and hit that sexy subscribe button. Alright, now that I have my cutting surface maxed, covered with the... fuck.